Nite Callers Bigfoot Radio.
Good evening and welcome to Nite Callers Bigfoot Radio. It is March 11th, 2018, and you're here with me, Lauren Smith, and I am flying solo tonight. Lori is out on a squatching. She's out squatching right now, so when we get her back next week, I'm sure she'll have plenty to tell us, I'm hoping she'll have plenty to tell us, and Rick will be on here in just a little bit. So I do not have much to catch you up on. Blog Talk seems to be semi-okay tonight, so I'm just going to jump right in and introduce our guest and get going so that he can tell us all of the amazing things he has to tell us. Chuck, how are you doing tonight?
Really good. Thank you.
That's good. So, so you said that you have not done a show before.
Nope, that's
right.
Correct. So you guys get to be my first one.
I am honored to have you on and to be your first one and to have fresh meat. I mean, nobody's heard your stories, and that's very exciting. That's very exciting. So, so how did you hear about us?
Well, actually, from Facebook, and I had seen, and that would be, I guess that's Lori, right? She was actually one of my friends that I had on Facebook. So somewhere, excuse me, this is probably in the last month or so, she reached out to me, and it was like out of the blue. And I don't know if it was just the conversations or whatever she might have seen with the confessionals or, with Tony Marshall and stuff. And she had reached out to me, and I was like, yes, I would, I would definitely be honored to come on your show.
Oh, awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, we do find a lot of our guests on Facebook. Just, we'll see them on the message boards, or I guess they're not called message boards anymore. I'm sorry. I just went 90s on us. But we'll see them on commenting on posts and stuff and sharing their stories, and that's just, it's great to be able to reach out and say, hey, do you want to share your experience with everyone else? And so I'm really glad she reached out to you.
No, me too. And I'd like to say I really appreciate it. And it was, I was honored when she'd sent me the message and said, hey, how would you like to be on the show? And I'm like, sure, it's fantastic. It's, I've been really pushing and trying to promote the Michigan Sasquatch Project. So I pushed really hard for that. And actually, next month I'm doing a speak with Dr. Jeff Meldrum. So I'm doing a conference in West Branch, Michigan, and so she may have seen that, that guy posted or something, but I was just, anything that we can do to actually get the word out, I'm just kind of promoting it and using Facebook, as that little soapstone to go ahead and just push it out.
Definitely, and feel free to promote away on our show, plug it as many times as you want. So if you want to go ahead and tell us about that, give some more details about that, feel free, and then we can launch into the rest of your, your experiences and everything.
Okay, well, and I believe it's on April 20th. It's at West Branch, Michigan. It's called the Bigfoot Conference up there. And there's going to be a couple people speaking, but really, me, myself, and another gentleman named Ernie Fargo, who's a part of the Michigan Sasquatch Project as well. But obviously, Dr. Jeff Meldrum is the show. And, him being there and showing up, and that's an honor just to be in the same room with that guy. Yeah. And to be able to do that is, it's like, it's a very, again, just like being on your show, it's an honor, and a lot of people
definitely
do these conferences so much, and it's like this is the first time, but in actuality, to get to it is kind of the funny part of the story, because going to this conference last year was like my exposure to it, and I went to this conference, and it's like now I'm speaking at it, so and it hasn't even been a year yet, so it's been kind of a whirlwind of encounters and situations that have led to this point. So again, it's exciting and it's an honor. So.
Oh, that's awesome. So, who is anyone else going to be speaking at the conference?
It's actually, I don't have the thing in front of me, but it's myself. I'm going to be speaking about tree structures, just like I'm going to be going over tonight. And his is his normal presentation that he does, and the other guy is doing, I think his is the riddle of Bigfoot, I think is his, and he's going to go in and actually tell about his encounters and things and stuff that kind of correlate with the Michigan Sasquatch Project. But he's a very interesting individual himself, and he's had some BFRO. He's documented back in the 90s where he had an encounter too. So it should be a lot of fun.
It does. That sounds like a pretty good lineup. A lot of good speakers there, definitely. So anybody that is going to that, feel free to. I guess you have a Facebook page for this. Yeah,
it's being pushed around. It's being promoted, but it is on my Facebook page. I keep putting it back out there as a reminder, and as it's getting closer to the conference, I'll post it and then post it again, and a lot of people will pick it up, and say, "Oh, I'm going! I can't wait to go." And again, any of these, as you know, any of these conferences, when you can go, it's exciting to listen to the people and to their encounters and, what they've seen and experienced. It's, just to be in that room with these people, it's always, to me, it's a very, very fun time.
Oh, yeah, it's definitely interesting. And also, I've been to one conference, I think, but for me, it was getting to meet all the people I had, seen online and stuff, and come together and just have a good time in person, and that was a big deal too. So not to mention meeting the speakers, that's just huge, and all the vendors and little exhibits and vendor booths and stuff. That's always fun.
Well, it's like you basically have a conference every Sunday, with having somebody on, and putting the word out there, and it's so nice to have these shows, and all the other shows that are out there that people can tune in and listen to and get the information, because there's so much bad information that gets out there, and so these shows I think are great. And when I delved into you guys and really looked, it's like you guys are having the researchers on there. I thought, what an awesome radio show to get the feedback from the people that are actually have their boots on the ground, that are out there and going out there. And I thought, this is a really, really great show. So, again,
thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, we really enjoy that part of it. We know that, like Sasquatch Chronicles and other shows have the witnesses on, which is fine. I mean, because that helps people want to step forward and tell their story and get the word out, and that's huge. They feel like they have a place to go and someone to talk to that believes them, and that's huge for someone who's witnessed this phenomenon. So for us to have the researchers on, they're also witnesses. Most of them have had sightings, but we just really wanted to have the researchers on to share their stories, share what they're doing out in the field and what results they're getting. That was kind of a big deal to us. It started out as just we were going to do it for one season, and then because of how many researchers there are, it just kind of took a life of its own, and that ended up being what we do all the time. So it's been really good. We've really enjoyed it. Yeah. Okay, so anyway, feel free at any time to re-plug the conference. I'm fine with that. And I also have the links up on our Facebook as well as our main Blog Talk page, so if anybody wants to go check that out, please do so. And okay, so let's just dive right in here. So what got you started on this topic?
Well, it's, as I tell the story and I've been telling it, it's kind of funny, and it has a little twist to it, but like everybody else, when you go back and that big question comes in, it's like, how did you get involved in this, or how is this that it got you? When I was young, it was In Search Of with Leonard Nimoy, and I remember the Bigfoot episode on there, and that always struck me as interesting. So as a kid growing up, I would go to the library, and I would always get the books at the library, and I'd always check out the Bigfoot books and the Loch Ness Monsters. I was so fascinated with all these things, but I never really thought that they would be anywhere remotely close to, to where you live. At least for me, Pacific Northwest, you're looking at California, you're looking at way high altitude places, and I never would have dreamed that they were this close to you or, here. And so to get into how this kind of started, I was working with a gentleman, and it was a guy that I worked with, and it was his friend. It was a different person. And I had gone out with him before to a hunting area out in Jackson, Michigan, and he puts trail cams out there. And so one day we're working, and we come back, and he says, all right, Mr. Bigfoot guy, because he knew that I had the interest for Bigfoot, and he says, I got a story for you. He says his friend had came home from work, and it was later in the evening, and he lives alongside in the city, and then the name of the town that he lives in is called Allen Park, but it's in smack dab in the city. There's no woods, there's no forest, there's no nothing around there, but what is there that runs alongside of his house is this creek, and it's the Rouge River. And this river is like a tributary that goes all the way through, and it connects through Dearborn and makes its way through Detroit. And the interesting thing is this guy came home, and when he came home, he had heard something alongside his garage, and he was doing something or fumbling around in his garage. I can't exactly know what he was doing. And he heard something. When he peeked his head out and looked in the creek, he saw something that was standing up that wasn't natural. And it was dark, and it was hairy, and it scared him so bad, it took off, and it ran down this creek, down this tributary that goes alongside, and it like stops and ends right where this guy lived. So he tells me the story, and I'm like, really? He goes, well, he wants the trail cams. He goes, so I'm going to go over there and give him these trail cams because he thinks he saw something. That right there is kind of what started it for me, because I'm thinking, are you kidding me? This is Allen Park, Michigan. There's no, I couldn't wrap my mind around it, because when I think of this town, I think of just schools and buildings and stores and things. There's nothing there that could even, I can't figure it out. So what I did was went online, and I started to search online, and I looked, and I ended up coming across this thing called the Nain Rouge, and that's Nainrouge. And what this was is, back in the, I think it was 1763 or 1700s in July, they had a sighting of this Nain Rouge. And this thing was a red-eyed creature that was hairy, and I was like, what? And I'm looking this up, and I'm starting to read, and the more that I started going into it, then I found out that in 1812 they had a sighting, in 1872 they had a sighting, and all of these things were happening in this area that was coming through. And I'm like, this is really, really bizarre. And if you look it up, or if you Google that and you get the information just to look, there's so much information on this Nain Rouge. I've never heard of it, and I had no idea, and it really piqued my fascination. So again, go right to your Google, and I started Googling and looking up stuff and trying to find out Michigan reports of Bigfoot and stuff. And this website came up of a gentleman that had a website, and his name is Bob Daigle. He's an author, and he has a book. And his book is, I think it's called Reports of Bigfoot, Sasquatch in Michigan. And it has 305 reports in over 83 counties. And this thing spans over 100 years. So I reached out to this gentleman, sent him an email. We started emailing back and forth. And this gentleman started giving me locations of locally. He's like, oh, yeah, he spotted some here by the airport, over here by Detroit Metro Airport, in a city called Romulus. In Livonia, there was a sighting, and this and that and the other. So I started looking into where he was at because I was fascinated. Then, talking to him, and this was just through emails, getting back and forth. I kind of formed a friendship with him, and he invited me, and he says, why don't you come on up? He was a speaker. Now, this gentleman we like to call him the godfather of Bigfoot in Michigan, because he does so many of the conferences, and he's got a book. And he does presentations, so he does them at libraries and does whatever, and he does a really, really good job explaining this. And he, aside from the BFRO, he has this book, and he has so many reports. And so people were calling and going to his website, and I believe it was MichiganBigfoot.org. And you could go there, and it was another place or an avenue for people to share stuff. And he was taking it and going out, and he ended up putting a book together. So to get to it, I started talking to him, and he invited me up to this conference up in West Branch, Michigan. He's like, I'm going to be speaking here. I think you would have fun. You get a lot of information. You seem to be kind of on the path right now. Come check it out. So I says to my son, I said, come on, let's do something fun. I said, and it's kind of like a joke. I'm like, would you like to go? You know, in West Branch from where I live is about a 2.5-hour drive. And my son says, yeah, let's do it, Dad. Let's do it. It'll be fun. So we did. And before this, and I'll just briefly, I have a thing that I was doing, which was a business I had formed with my father. It was called Open Doors Paranormal. And so I had all kinds of equipment, full spectrum cameras, FLIRs, and this and that, for the stuff that we set up doing that stuff. So I threw a couple of devices in my car, and I did bring a FLIR camera and some night vision stuff, and we head out and we went to this conference. And I tell you, when you first get in the doors, you go to one of these things, it was just so surreal to see all these people that had encounters, that had these things, that were standing up and telling their story and all this. So I'll cut it to a minimum. Basically, I met a bunch of really great people. And while we were there, I'm listening to these people tell their stories, and I ended up making some friends. And what I was trying to do was gather people so that I was getting ready to start a podcast. And I wanted to see if people would do an interview with me. So as I asked certain people, you know, in between the breaks of the conference, you know, would you be interested to do this? One of the gentlemen says, you know what, I'll do one better than that. I'll take you over to the property where I had a BFRO encounter. It's documented. If you want to see it, I'll take you there. I'm like, wow, that would be great. So after the conference and after meeting all these people, we got invited to a place where they were going to do like a little mini excursion, and it was down at the Rifle River. So and a couple caravans of people were going down, and these are researchers that go out in that area, and me and my son went, and I handed him some binoculars, and we're walking, and we're kind of like up on this ravine, and he sees prints with these binoculars. So now all these guys get real excited, and they're all going down, and it's like my son found prints. So everybody's going down to see, and they're down there, and they're taking pictures and looking at it, and they were pretty good. They were on the beach of the Rifle River. And so going out there and meeting these people and seeing that, I'm like, wow, this is really great. And now we found prints, and this was all new. It was all exciting and everything else. And meeting this other individual, and he invited me to his property. And I said, don't know these people, but, you know, they seem harmless. Let's go. So I talked to my son, and here it is. I'm 2.5 hours away from home, and I'm like, you know, you want to do it? And I'm looking at my son. I'm like, this has got to be fun. I go, must be meant to be. You know, you have one of those opportunities. I said, we were just going to this conference just to see this. Now we're at the Rifle River. Now you found prints. Let's go to this guy's property. And so we did. So we actually left, and this is kind of how the whole thing or the evening began, and this was all the same day. And this was last year. This was April 29th was the day of the conference. And this is kind of like my being born day for me for all of this. Even having any kind of knowledge of it and reading books, it was never anything I never expected, or to have any kind of, you know, an encounter or a situation. So we get out there, and we get to his property, and it's beautiful. And this is in up north Michigan. And basically, it's like 1,500 acres of private land, and it's gated. So there's no one around. There's nothing there. You got to get in with gates and that. And he has a really cool property. That's the way it was set up. And they have a house and a couple cabins, and they got all the machines. They had side-by-sides and four-wheelers and everything else. I'm like, wow, this is really cool. So after we get there and we get to the property, and after doing what we did earlier and at the conference all day, it's not dark, but it's dusk. So he wanted to take us down for a ride on the trails to go out and look at stuff. I'm like, yeah, this is going to be great. So I had my, I think I did bring the FLIR, and I had a spotlight, and we had our iPhones. And we go and we get inside a side-by-side, and he takes us off into this gated area, and we drive. And we go through, and we're driving the trails. And, again, it was just so beautiful to see everything. You're seeing elk, and you're seeing deer and porcupine and owls and everything else. I'm like, wow, this is just so cool. We get down to an area where there's this, the river comes through off of his property. We get as far as we can go, and we get out and we start walking. And I'm going to do a tree knock, so we're out there. So grab this big branch, this big log or whatever, so they get a good tree knock going, and do one. And nothing happens. There was nothing, absolutely zero. But the weird thing is, as we're walking and he's walking, my son is behind him, and his girlfriend is in front of me. We hear this boom, boom, boom. And it was like so loud that I felt it on my feet, but I could feel it in my chest too. And she turned around and looked me straight in the eyes, and she's like, "Did you?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I just heard that." But they were walking ahead, and there was so much leaf litter that was on the ground, they didn't hear it. So I looked at her and I'm like, "Yeah, I heard it." And it sounded to me, if you could describe it, it sounded like something had come out of a tree, and it had hit the ground, like with a really heavy boom. But it was three of them. And even to this day, I don't know what it was. And you can think it was this, you can think it was that. But the one thing that I do know is I'm way deep down by this river in this private area. There's nothing there. There's no people. So don't know what it is. We still go down. We look through, and it starts getting dark. And in essence, to all of that, I'm just kind of taking in all of the nature and all of your beautifulness that's going on. And it's getting dark, and it's getting dark. And he's like, "You know what? Well, we better head back." So as we get back, and we get back to the machine, we all climb in, and he's got a Rhino. It's a really cool side-by-side. And we get in, and we're driving back the trail that we took to come in. And this is kind of where it gets weird, because it's dark, and my eyes are like super wide awake. I'm like wide open. I'm like just taking in everything and enjoying everything. And as we come back around the trail, and we're coming around, and this is where it gets kind of interesting and fascinating to me, there's a tree that was ripped and turned upside down and slammed in the middle of the trailway that we came in. So we came in on this trail, and now we're leaving to come out. And these are like logging trails. And so now there's this big
that
tree.
Wasn't there.
That wasn't there, because obviously we wouldn't be able to get in there. So as we pull back, and it's dark, super, super dark. So we got the lights on in front of us with that, and he's like, this is kind of strange. So he gets out of the machine, and I get out of the machine, and we walk over to it. And I'm looking at it, and I'm like, wow. So I go right over to it, and I wrap my arms around it like the bear hug it. So I was going to try to lift it and see, and I couldn't budge it. So I couldn't move this thing at all. And I'm looking at him. Now, again, this is the beginning of our friendship, and I don't really know this guy. I just met him, and I'm looking at him, and he's scratching his head. And he had a gun that he came with, and I'm like, "You better get your gun. Grab your gun." And I can smell this smell. And the biggest smile kind of went across my face, because in my brain, in my mind, after everything else that's happened, I know what the smell is. And I said, "Can you smell that?" And he's like, "I can smell that." I'm like, "Do you know what that is?" And he's like, and he's looking at me. And again, when I looked up in his face, I started to see fear. And as that happened, then I thought, oh, wait a minute, maybe I should be scared now, because I was excited, because for the first time, and after watching all of those shows and everything, you always hear, or I've always heard them say, well, and then it had this kind of smell and whatever, and here it is now. There's a tree slammed in the middle of the trail. And
so what did it smell like to you?
To me, and a lot of people will say, they always say it smells like the wet dog thing that you have. It did smell like a kind of like a garbagey smell. It was very pungent and very musky, but it was a smoke smell too, like brimstone.
Really?
And it was really, it was a really, really, really strong smell. And so he's looking around, and he can't figure it out. And when he said to me, he goes, "We better get out of here." So now my whole senses and my whole everything changed, because now I'm thinking, I think he's freaked out, so maybe I should be freaked out too. So my whole thing became excited. I'm thinking, I just had an experience. I'm like, we don't know what the heck put this in the middle of the trail. So he's one of these daredevil guys, so he wants to back up, go around, drive through, and get around this thing. He's going to figure out a way that we're going to cut through to get around this trail, because we can't move it. And we do so, and as we get around it and we start to pull over, now all the darkness and everything sets in. And this is probably one of the biggest mistakes I think that we made, but at the time we didn't really know. We should have stayed, and we should have stayed in that area, because that smell was so strong, and it was only right there. So I'm assuming we had been down to and by the river not more than 20 or 30 minutes. So that happened all within that amount of time, and so something was there, and it was definitely in the area. And so we left, and we go down the trail, and as we get back and we're taking our way back, he has a cabin that's out off to the side. And he says, "We're going to pull over here for a minute, and we're going to check this out," because they haven't been there. Now, he hasn't been to the property in a few months. So I think the last time they were there was like maybe November. So it's been several months now, because it's April, and they go there and they hunt. And so we pull up to this thing, and as we get to his cabin, They have an outhouse, and my son goes over with him, and I walked over to the woodside, and his girlfriend goes into the bathroom to use the outhouse. And again, it's another one of those weird situations where on the porch of his cabin, all the wood that I guess was stacked there was all pulled out and thrown out and was like all over in front of the cabin. The keys that they had stashed on this cabin were missing. So he's shaking his head, and he's trying to figure this out. He's like, well, nobody can be here, and nobody's supposed to be here, and he's trying to figure out what's going on. And so he's fumbling through his pocket, and he's getting the keys. My son's iPhone is on, and he's recording this. And on the recording, you hear this growl. And I'm kind of off maybe 30 yards away, because his girlfriend was in the outhouse. So I kind of walked off to the woods a little bit because I went to the bathroom. And I can hear my son going, Dad, get over here, and I'm like, oh. I'm hearing noises behind, and I'm hearing stuff. But again, there's deer, there's elk, there's everything. And after everything that just happened, I have no idea what it was. So I'm starting to go over to them, and he still has the iPhone recording and has this growl. I don't know what the growl was. He doesn't either. But as Ernie goes and he opens up the door of his cabin, inside his cabin, everything is disarrayed. And he, again, has got this puzzled look on his face. He's trying to figure, he's like, this isn't right, So there's all these little weird signs that are kind of adding up to a point, and I'm just trying to figure it out myself. And I'm like, I don't know. I don't know if this is supposed to be right. I don't know if the wood's supposed to be down. I have no clue. And I had just met this gentleman, now this would be maybe a few hours ago at the conference. So I'm kind of following his lead and seeing what's going on. And it was just one of those really weird situations. But I was never scared. There was nothing that told me that, we're in danger or anything like that. We kind of come back. Again, he's scratching his head. We get back into the machine, and we drive back. And we get to the house. And as we go over to the house, he kind of lays this thing. He says, well, you and your son can sleep in the back. We have a bedroom here and this and that. And he goes, I hate to do this to you, but I was really up late last night, and I'm going to go to bed. So I'm thinking, oh, great, I just met you, and you're going to bed. And here I am. And at the time, I had brought night vision goggles, and I had a FLIR camera, and I think I had a full spectrum camera with me, too. So I'm thinking while I'm here, I'm like, I'm going to go out, and I want to look to the back of his house in that area. There's woods all the way around, and there's woods. It's surrounded. So I kind of wanted to take that opportunity to go out there and just kind of look around. My son, on the other hand, is like petrified. Everything that has happened.
He heard the growl.
Right. And he's got this, he's like, I don't want to go out there. I don't want to go out there. So I can see him in the house. It's like a fishbowl. And you can see him, and he's like pacing back and forth. And I go out there, and this is kind of weird. And I look across in the back of the woods, and I see with the night vision on it, I see it like an orb, and it's a reddish something that's just maybe 100 yards or so back into the deep part of the woods back there, and everything is dark. And this is before I knew the property. I know the property now like the back of my hand, but this is my very first time there. And I'm looking at it, and I can't see it, so I take the FLIR out, and I hold the FLIR camera up to it, and it doesn't show any heat. There's nothing there. Nothing will show up on the FLIR camera. So I'm puzzled about it. I look in the night vision, I can see it. So I'm looking up with this, can't see it, look down with the other one. I walk back over, and I go to the house, and I said to my son, I said, just please come on out for a second and put your eyes on this so your dad knows that what he's seeing is what he's really seeing. So I get him talked into it. He comes outside, and he looks, he's like, yep, I see a dad there. And he goes back inside. I'm like, jeez. So, and again,
he sounds like me.
Well, it was a totally new experience. And, it was we were supposed to go to a conference. Now we're in the middle of the woods with people we don't know. And there was a tree slammed. And, there's all these weird things that just culminated and happened pretty quickly. And this is where it gets kind of weird. And I know there's a lot of researchers and people talk about infrasound and everything else. I think this was the one and only time that this had happened to me. A lot of people will say it's being zapped or this, that, and the other. And I'll get into another story that happened again on a property with that. But as I come around and I have the cameras out there, all of a sudden I get this feeling, and I'm hearing things, but I get this feeling of I'm really, really, really being watched. And I start to get scared. I mean, there's no other way to describe it. There's no other way to really go into it and just to tell you that I was really, really getting fear. And it was a strange fear because I felt like I was going to die. I felt like something was going to get me. I felt like every kind of scary movie I've ever seen in my life had just now come upon me, and there was something there. So I'm hearing stuff in the woods behind me. I'm hearing stuff on the other side of me, and it's probably just animals. But I have this immense fear that I've never had in all my years. I've never been so scared, and I couldn't figure out what this is. So I come back, and I walk to the back of the house. And on the back of the house where you go in at, there's like there's 3 steps that go up. And on the side of the house where the door's at, there's like a black wrought iron lantern, like a night light that's on the side of the house. And the light is on. And as I come up to the back and I have my back to it, I'm hearing something behind me. And this fear just overwhelms me. And again, to this day, I've never, ever felt like that again. I was so just scared. I mean, there's just no real way to describe it other than I was just
Do you think it was instinct, or have you heard of or experienced infrasound?
No, and I didn't know anything about that at the time. You know, when this had happened, I had no clue that this is something that could happen, whatever. I just couldn't get over the fact that I was so scared, and I didn't know why. I didn't have no guns or anything with me. I had nothing there. Right. I just had these, you know, a night vision and a flare. And this gets a little even more weird, and I can't describe this. I'm just telling you what happened, and it's bizarre. These big, huge, and this is probably funny, people are going to laugh, these big, huge moths, and they look like butterflies that are, you know, like swallowtail, monarch swallowtails. They're that big. And they started flying all around me, and like there was at least 15 of these things, and they were flying, and they were big, and they were just moths, and they were flying all around me. I'm like, what is going on? And these moths are flying around me. I look, and I hear this sound of like tap, 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 and I look over, and that wrought iron lantern that is on the side of the house is vibrating, and it's moving, and it's like shaking, so it's going boom, 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 and it's moving back and forth. So I'm looking at this light that is mounted to the house, the outside nightlight, and it's actually moving and shaking. And the only thing that I can think of in my weird mind of mine, do you remember seeing Close Encounters of the Third Kind? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Do you remember the scene where he's in his truck and then the railroad sign things start going back and forth, and everything is moving, and he's like at the truck and the lights are coming up behind him? It was like that. This thing is vibrating, and I'm watching it move, and it's shaking, and I'm like, what is going on? These moths are flying around me. And I'm like, that's it. I push open the door, and I walk in, and my son is right there in the kitchen where this is at. And I come in the door, and as soon as I unzip my jacket, I kid you not, 4 or 5 of these moths just fly right out of my shirt, and they're in the house. He's like, what is that? I'm like, I don't even know. So I unzip it, and it's funny now.
It sounds like a bad acid trip. Like, what?
Yeah.
What is happening?
If it could have been a part in a horror movie, it would have been perfect. I'm like, I was waiting for the coming out from the Friday the 13th or something, you know. And so I went ahead and in the kitchen with him, and he's like, what's going on? I go, I'm pretty adamant about going back outside. And I'm like, we came all this way. We drove all this far, and I'm like, I want to go back out and look. And my son's like, don't go back out there, Dad. Don't go out. And he's scared. And I'm looking at his face, and I'm like, geez, he's like really scared. So I take, and I kind of do that, weigh my options thing, and we're here. And I take my flare, and I put it back in the case, and I put the thing up. All right, I won't. I said, we're good. We'll go back into the room, and we'll call it a night. And that is the very first night for me of how this all happened. It was all just going to a conference. You know, we were just going to West Bears to go to a conference, and that's basically the encounter of what happened that night. And
oh my gosh.
It was a great first it was a great first thing, because at that point in that night, and the next morning when we got up and went and looked around, we went back to the area where the tree was slammed at and this and that, and it was really, really cold, and it was rainy, and he took me to different parts of the area where some other activity had happened, and so now my eyes are like wide open. When I left the area and we drove back home the next day and got home, all of the stuff that had happened, it's in my brain, and I still couldn't figure out why I was so frightened, why I was so scared. And that started the whole thing for me. I kind of, at that point, really wanted to get back in the woods and really wanted to get back out, and I wanted to find out what the heck that smell was and what was going on. And when we went back to the area to where the tree was, which we did this just to see, maybe it was just a smell that was there, you know. When we went there, it never smelled it again. There was nothing in that area that remotely even smelled like that. And so I knew that that was like a one-time thing. And I kick myself in the head now because I think about it, I'm like, we were right there. At the time, I didn't know that we probably should have just sat there and waited and seen what was going to happen. But, you know, you look back in retrospect to see, and you really can't. It's hard to say, oh, what it could have, should have, you know. And that started it. That was the beginning. And here it is now, almost a year later. Now I'm speaking at the conference. And to kind of give you an idea of what's happened since then, I started going up as much as we could, and all last summer. So as much as, you know, when May came and June came, July, 4th of July, I wanted to, and that's when the tree structure thing started happening. That's when these signs started happening. That's all of a sudden I started finding prints, and we started finding more things, and then I'm realizing, okay, so yes, they can be in Michigan. You know, yes, there is something going on here, and you don't have to be in California, or you don't have to be in Colorado or Utah or something there. There's something that is definitely going on, and it solidified it for me just with that one night, and it just started me off. And I don't know if you were able to, I know I was trying to send pictures to her. I have tons and tons and tons of pictures of the things that we started finding and documenting. So I just started collecting data and going out with the cameras that I have, and then started setting out digital recorders and the cameras and started shooting just small aerial footage that I could and go back and look and see what you have and this, that, and the other. And we just started finding all these really cool, interesting things. And this is all, in the beginning, it was all up north, and it was all on the property. And then as this thing started branching out, and this is where, and over the past few months of here lately, I started finding things that were next to me. And that really opened up, you know, more doors for me and more things for me to figure out and more things for me to go, oh, my God. They're not, I don't have to drive 4 hours to go up north to find them. I'm finding things 6 minutes from my house. I'm finding things. I live in an area, to give you an idea, where we're surrounded by 7 lakes, and that's a minimum. And I'm off of Commerce Lake, and so there's a lake here, there's a lake there. We're surrounded by woods, and there's so much places. There's a lot of parks, spotting national parks and state parks and county parks. And so what better place to go start walking is go on these trails and go into these areas that are out by me, and that's kind of opened this doorway for me to see that these things are like really, really close. And so I was trying to send some pictures to you guys so you guys could have to see. And I know she's been on my page, or on the Michigan Sasquatch page. So I'll kind of give you another synopsis of what was going on. We spent so much time on his property and going out there, and me and him sat back, and he's like, God, there's so many things. I said, why don't we both kind of came up with this. We need to form a group. There's not a real group. There's several groups in Michigan that go out researching. And if anybody has any kind of encounter or anything in Michigan, everybody goes to the BFRO, and they put their report in, and it goes to those guys. And I'm like, why does everybody have to go to them? Why can't we have something that is taking over Michigan and putting Michigan on the map? Everybody knows that California, and everybody knows where all these areas where the stuff is. I'm like, let's try to see what we can do for Michigan. So we came up with the name, the Michigan Sasquatch Project. And that was to kind of promote this and kind of to go in and figure out. And a couple other people joined, and we just started going out, and we started looking. And the one thing that I can say as and I don't even like to call myself a researcher or an investigator. I'm just an enthusiast. I don't even know what label I have. But when you go out there, and you look, you will find. And either some people do and some people don't. Because I have a lot of friends that are hunters that say, you know what, I've been in the woods for 30 years. I ain't never seen nothing. You're crazy. You're nuts. So I've dealt with, in the last 9-10 months, with a lot of naysayers, a lot of people who look down at me. And once I started going, and I actually didn't go public with a lot of things, and I started telling people will look at you in a funny way and just think, really, you're one of those guys? You know, I never thought you would be that guy. And I'm like, well, you know what? I've experienced things. I have pictures. I have prints, and people still look at you funny. And that's the saddest thing, I think, in this thing that we share, because it's the big brick wall that I think all researchers are hitting, is nobody's taking it seriously. And the ones that do take it seriously, we're all in that same community. So, trying to get people on board and trying to get the message out, and I say this a lot to people, and I say it on my page and stuff. Whenever you hear on the news, CNN, Fox, or your local news, anybody talks about Bigfoot or talks about UFOs, it's always with sarcasm. It's always with a smile and a laugh, and the news reporter will say, well, Steve Johnson seen Bigfoot, and then we'll get back to you. And they make a joke out of it. They always make it funny. It's almost like an insult your intelligence thing to make it, almost they want you to laugh because they don't want you to think that this is something that's out there. And I think in the science community and everything else, there's nobody that's really back. Dr. Jeff Meldrum, and there's a couple other people that are out there, but nobody backs this. And everybody is still in the belief that, Bigfoot did that. Is it a one thing? Is it a one Bigfoot's making all these, footprints and all this crazy stuff? And I just think that doing this Michigan Sasquatch Project is a way for us to put Michigan on the map and let other people know and try to get the information out there, try to educate people to a certain degree. Mainly, I'm just sharing everything I find. On my page, when I go out in the woods, I take pictures of everything that I see. And if it seems like it's something is there or worthy, I post it, and I just tell people, you tell me what you think it is. I'm not telling you it's this, I'm not saying it's that, because there's so many other people in this community, which, that, what do they call it?
Right.
Blob squatch pictures, and where guys will take a picture, and they'll go home, and they'll zoom in, and then they'll put a circle on it, and I'll look at it, and I'm like, what is it? I don't see anything. And I think that those people, and I'm not pointing fingers and I'm not saying names, I think they do a really injustice for the ones that are out there saying this stuff ain't real. Oh, look at this guy. Well, you got to turn it upside down, and if you look it to the left, and if you zoom in and put it up here, you'll see an eye and you'll see an elbow. And I'm like, that's not Bigfoot.
It's so pixelated most of the time, It's like looking at an ultrasound picture. I'm like, well, I'm glad you see the baby because I don't know what I'm looking at.
And it's hard, and it's hard for you to stand on two legs. And, I don't ever say anything bad about anybody. I don't ever judge. I just think to myself, you're an idiot. I just can't believe that you would put that out there and then say, you can't see that, or you look at that. And I just wanted to have more. And I wanted to be able to show people more so that you could have. There's things I haven't there's a lot of stuff that I haven't posted, and I won't post on Facebook. I've been saving it for my presentation for the conference that I'm doing with Dr. Meldrum next month. And so I've been saving a lot of things. One of the things that I've probably in the last month or so, almost 2 months, I've found is the big teepee structures. And finding ones that are big enough that they're big. I mean, these things are huge teepee structures, and they're beautiful and they're fascinating, and I'm trying to figure out how did they get there and who's making these and why are they, there's so many different correlations that are always the same. And the same thing with the tree structures. And this is what I'm actually speaking about at the conference. One of the things that I've noticed is you'll see in the researchers when they go out there, those X's and those arches and the asterisks, the stars. And one of the things that we were finding is stars like crazy, these geometric, beautiful stars that could never be natural tree fall. And when you're on a private property that's gated and you're not in the city and you're not anywhere close to anybody, there's no reason for somebody to go walking on somebody else's property and make this geometric star. When they're 5- and 6-pointed stars and some of these things are off the ground and they're 15 feet off the ground, you're like, how did it didn't fall that way? Somebody definitely was here. This is definitely made. And I was trying to get some of those pictures and send to Laura, and was sending them to her so that she could see. It's just truly, truly fascinating. And one of the really fascinating things about it is they're made to be seen. Now, on an area where he's at or on an area where I go, and in the parks that I've noticed, it's not in the middle of the park. It's not in the center part of the woods. These things are usually between 10 and 15 feet from a trail. They're right off a trail. They're made to be seen. They're there, and you can't. It's It's not something that I think that they're making, and yet nobody knows, what it is. Everybody has a bunch of assumptions. Is it leading to water, or is it a thing that they're making for? A lot of people will say that they're mating. If it's a certain time of year, they're mating, or some people want to say it's a warning. And when they make these X's or when they put these arches out there, it's telling people don't go in here, or is it telling people do come in here? Is it for a different tribe, or is it for people, or are people actually making these things? Because I ask the question all the time when I go. In fact, I just was talking to a ranger last month, and I'm like, so these teepee structures, I'm like, where are they at? Do you see them? Do you think? And he goes, well, nobody's allowed to do anything. Nobody's allowed to mess with the woods. Nobody's allowed to take anything in. Nobody's allowed to do anything and build them. So he goes, we think that a homeless person might have made it, And I'm like, so what are they making them in the middle of the night? And yet nobody knows. So you can't make something that is so big and so beautiful in the middle of the day. People would see you. They would see them building. So it leaves, it leaves a lot of questions. And that was one of the things that I've been really documenting hard. I'm doing a video that's going to be going on the YouTube channel, and I'm really trying to put this all together because I have so many videos and so much data of pictures that I've captured these things, and they're truly, truly unique. And I don't have any answers. I can't. Everybody can speculate, and everybody can speculate on all these things, but I'm totally beside myself on that. And I'll get off on that for a second and go back to the property of being going back to the area where this all happened to me the first night. As we were going there, and these are kind of weird things, and I know, as you well know, that in the community there's the people that think that these are flesh and blood, and then there's the people that think that they're, the supernatural end of it, the woo side, the things with, with being zapped. And a lot of people a lot of them don't even want to talk about it, or they don't want to talk about or acknowledge, the orbs or any of that, because it's somewhere along the line, people just think, come on, it's a flesh and blood animal. It eats, it goes to the bathroom, it's living. And then you have the other people that think that, well, it took 3 steps and then it disappeared, or they think that they cloak, or they think of all these other crazy things. But what I will tell you is, one time we were in the woods, we just got there, we just got up north, and we were in the back, and I was with the gentleman again on his property, and I was maybe 7-10 feet away, and he was touching this piece of wood that was way up high in the thing, and the way it was placed, and when I looked at it, we're taking pictures, I'm like, that's pretty weird. And all of a sudden, he looks at me and he goes, I don't feel right. And he almost fell. And he almost fell right to the ground. And I kind of walked over to him like, you all right? And he goes, I can't. He's like, and he looked like he was like dizzy, like he was spinning, like he was totally, his equilibrium was totally off. He's like, I feel sick. Do you smell anything? Are you okay? And I'm like, yeah, I'm fine. And so I had to help him all the way back and go back to the house. And he couldn't hardly walk. He couldn't have anything. And that was the first time where I think that he had gotten zapped. Where my thing that had happened with me, it instilled me with fear. This time it had hit this guy, and I've heard so many other times that people say it's like it gives you like a shock to your body, and he was losing his functions. He couldn't get his equilibrium. It took maybe 45 minutes to an hour after he went back to the house, and we sat him down, and he sat down, and then he was fine, and everything was good, and he couldn't explain it. And I thought, all right, let's think of this logically. Do you have low blood sugar? What is it? I'm thinking, well, we had lunch. You were drinking a pop. You had a candy bar. I was with you. You had pizza. I'm thinking, it's not that you didn't have food. I was trying to break it down. I'm like, has this ever happened to you before? And this is a guy, he's a couple years younger than me. He's a backpacker. He's a hiker. He's an avid hunter. He's not somebody that's not even out of shape or anything. So I couldn't break it down and say, well, maybe it's a health issue. But the first thing that I tried to answer it off was maybe it was, low sugar and you were getting dizzy or whatever. It's never happened to him since. And yet this is the other partner of mine with the Sasquatch, Michigan Sasquatch Project. And he can't explain it, and he's the avid hunter. and so it doesn't make sense to him, any of these things, it doesn't make sense to him. And I'm out there with him, and I'm like, you can't explain it. There's an area that we call, and I'll just say we call it Dollar Bill Hill or whatever it is. There's a hill that we go through, and we had came through it one time in the middle of the day, and as soon as we were walking up to this hill, we heard this pow, pow, 2 loud knocks right then and there, really loud. And so it got our attention, and we're looking around, and we're trying to see stuff. And it's on a hill where he just started to, and we started putting trail cams out there. And I wasn't a big advocate for the trail cams because everything I've ever heard about them, if you want them to go away, put up trail cams because they're going to avoid them, and they don't want to get caught on film, obviously. But we put the trail cam out in this area, and we come the next day, and it's not working. It won't record. It doesn't work in this area. So when we put it on there, we brought it back to the house, get it to the house, it works fine. Take it back out to the thing, put it back up there, it won't work. And you can't understand it and can't explain it. So we put a digital recorder out there. Put a digital recorder out there, same thing. It won't record. The batteries will be dead. And so I explained to him, I'm like, well, how do you explain that, Mr. Flesh and Blood? How is it that every time we go to this area, because I have to pose, we're kind of like Laura and Hardy. He'll be the one guy and I'll be the other guy, and it's kind of like good cop, bad cop.
That's kind of the best way to research, though, playing devil's advocate and challenging each other.
Yeah,
that's a good team to me.
So I always put it off. I'm like, well, how do you explain the other day when, or last month when you couldn't walk and all this? And he's like, I can't. How do you explain that this trail cam, they don't work? We switched cameras, we switched batteries, everything. Went back out there, put it up there, go back the next day, and it will not work. It has not worked. Just strange, weird things, And I can tell you another time I was out there. Now I brought some of the ghost equipment out there. There's a thing called a REM pod, and a REM pod picks up electromagnetic energy, and you put it out there. And if anything kind of comes near it, comes close to it, it'll start making sounds and beeping and lighting and all this stuff. So as we were sitting in the back, I made a fire, and we're back in this property. Right up to the woods, there's like a little hill that goes up. I put this REM pod on there, and there's this big tree that's right next to it. So we're listening to Sasquatch Chronicles. Got it on a podcast. It's like 10 o'clock at night. Got a fire going, and we're sitting there, and I have my night vision, and I have the FLIR. And the REM pod starts going off. And this thing is maybe 35, 40 feet away, so I pull out the FLIR, and I look, there's nothing there. There's nothing there, and there's no reason for this thing to be in the middle of the woods to go off. Now, if you were to walk up to it, just your own energy, as you get close to it, it would be beep, 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 beep. As you get close to it, it would set it off. So I pull out the night vision. I look all around. Can't see nothing. I get up and I walk over to it. There's nothing there. And so we go back and we're sitting down and we're listening. We have a fire. And this happened maybe like 3 or 4 times. And at certain times when it would happen, it would just not stop. And it would just go and go and go. Well, it was one of those days where he's like, okay, I'm going to go to bed. And here I am out there by the campfire by myself. And I'm sitting out there. And I hear an owl. And I hear an owl that's directly that would be to the right of me, and it's kind of far away, but you can hear it, and it's one of those who cooks for you owls, and you get that ooh, 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 and I'm hearing it. I'm like, okay. A little while later, I hear another one, and now it's coming from the left side of me, and it's a different sounding owl, but it's doing the same kind of thing, but this sound is a higher pitch. I have this on a digital recorder because I was smart enough to put a digital recorder in a tree, and I would just leave it at night when I would go in. And so I hear this coming from that side, and the REM pod ahead of me is still going off over there, and I'm thinking it's nothing. I'm just trying to think of, well, it's going off, it's going off. I've already put my eyes on it with the FLIR, and there's no heat or anything there. So now I hear another owl, and this owl is dead straight in front of me. And it's almost like it's triangulating. So now I'm hearing the one to the right, and they're getting closer. And I'm sitting in the chair. Now I'm hearing the one to the left, and it's a higher pitch sound, but it's the same type of thing, and it's getting closer. And now I'm hearing the third one, and it's coming in right directly in front of me. And it's starting to make me feel a little nervous. And again, early on in this, I knew nothing about mimicking or anything like that. I never even had a clue. But I'm just thinking, is it mating season for owls? It's kind of weird for owls to keep getting closer to me, and they're getting closer to me, and I couldn't figure it out. I didn't know what it was. It creeped me out, and I had that weird feeling where the hair on the back of my neck was standing up. I wasn't terrified like I was that time when that other thing happened, but it still instinct. I'm like, this is weird. I'm going in. And I did. I left the digital recorders out there. The owls got closer to where it intimidated me enough. I'm thinking, that's just weird. And I went inside. So the next morning when we get up, go outside, I realized like a dum-dum, I left that REM pod out there all night. And so I go over to retrieve the REM pod, and I go and I grab it. It's got a little 9-volt battery, and I shut it off and grab it. And right alongside, right next to it, was the big tree that I told you about. The weirdest thing, there's leaf litter all over the ground where everything is at, but right in front of the tree on the ground, probably about the size of a very large bear, all the leaves were pushed away, so it was black dirt. Something was laying there, and something was there. And so now it all made sense to me, at least in my brain. As I'm sitting in the chair at the campfire and I'm putting on the floor to see it, this thing is behind the tree. So I'm picking up the tree, and so I'm not getting any heat. And the REM pod is doing what it's supposed to be doing. It's picking up that something is really, really close to that. And today I still couldn't explain it, but anywhere else there's leaves all over except for behind the tree. I took several pictures of it, and it just made me wonder, what was that? And what was the sound, of the owls, and as it come in. And as time went on and I did more research and I got my foot wet and I started, reading other people's stuff, and I realized that they do mimic. And I still, I'm not going to say that it is or that it wasn't, but it was creepy enough for me to think that, why would these owls keep getting closer and keep getting keep getting close to me? But they were different pitched owls. I didn't know enough about recordings or listening to owls at that time to know what one sounds like, and then what if somebody was imitating one to sound like. But yeah, that was another just a bizarre things that I noticed that was happening. And the same thing had happened on the coyotes I'd gotten. I put a trail or a digital recorder down by this river that goes through his property up there, and come back, and 30 minutes after we take off in the machine, and you can hear the machine as we drive away, 30 minutes you hear this loud scream, a yell, and then the coyotes. And this is almost like everybody else's audio. You always hear the coyotes. It's either the coyotes at the beginning or the coyotes in the end. And it was the same sound. And as I started researching and finding other audios of other people that had recorded it, it sounded exactly the same. And so I'm like, gotta start putting on. So then I got into the point of every time I go, bringing a digital recorder and putting it out there and try to get as much data as I can. And you can sit there for hours and hours and listen to the stuff just to get that few seconds of something, making sounds and making these vocalizations. And it just started building again to more and more things. That again, that was up north, and that was on the property. I started opening up another aspect of this is by my house. There's a park that's called Dodge Park, and I can walk to it within 7 to 10 minutes. I can be in it. So we started walking this trails of this Dodge Park, and this was in June, I believe. And I was with my son again, and as I'm cutting through, and it's really, really all the growth, everything is growing, and it's beautiful, and it's green, it's everywhere. I ended up finding a big, beautiful teepee structure out there, and I'm like, wow, the logs on it. I mean, they were huge. So something had made this, and it made my eyes open up, and it caught my attention. But the most fascinating thing about it is, as we were out in this big, easement, you know how they have the electrical wires and those, I'm trying to think of those pathways where the electric lines go through and the power lines go through?
Yeah, right.
It's like a crossway or a walkway, and it comes through, a lot of forest areas. It just cuts through the state like that. Well, in one of those areas where we're at, I was standing in about 100 to 150 yards away, and I did not see this thing. My son was back there, and he's taking pictures with his iPhone, and he saw something black. And so I actually have, and I have a picture of one standing. And, as I was making fun of earlier and saying to people, you can see this black blob squatch thing, and with people draw a circle around it, and you're trying to strain your eyes and trying to figure it out. So this thing wasn't like one of those. This was actually something you could see. It was bipedal, it was black, and the whole thing. And I've never put it on Facebook. I've never put it anywhere. In fact, I'm sharing it at the conference because it's a unique picture. And as you zoomed in on it and you look at it, you can definitely see there's something standing there. And yet I couldn't see it at the time and didn't know. This blew my mind. And, it was one of those eye-opening things to me that these things are a lot closer than you really understand and than you know. And that started me probably for the last 4 months or so, 4 or 5 months. I've really been going out close to me and hitting these parks and these stuff like that. And that's, like I said, I'm up to, I think, 23 now of those teepee structures that I found. And there's an area that's called Kensington Park, and I was out there, and there was 10 of these structures that I counted in one area, and it looks like Bigfoot Town. That's what I call it on my Facebook page. You see, it looks like a little village, where they had built all of these really cool, beautiful structures, and it's just amazing, And to me, I always look at it like it's like artwork. It's like they're displaying, their artwork, and these things are made to be seen. Some of them look like hunted blinds, where they would, a lot of people have described them that they chase the deer into these, and they get them caught up in there, and they would hunt them. I had a lot of people tell me a lot of different theories on these pictures that I've posted and put out there, but the energy of being there and looking at it, seeing it, it just blows my mind, because I can't say who's making them, but I can say that what it is it's drawn me to it and getting me to keep going out where I want to keep going, and I want to keep finding more things and keep going into the woods, and it's just amazing. That's the one thing I didn't tell you or add to that. When I heard the wood knocks that we heard that time up on that hill, which was the same hill that I told you that the cameras won't work and the digital recorders won't work, we walked through the center of the hill and come back. It took us about an hour and a half to get all the way up to the top and come back. And as we were leaving and we walked out, just to be me, I said, "Thank you," like that, loud enough so that they could hear me. And all of a sudden there was a bam, bam again. And
oh my gosh.
Yes, and it totally blew us away. And it was a vindication moment, because we're in the center of this place where there's nobody around. And again, it's acres and acres of private land. And you can't get on it because it's gated and locked up. You couldn't even get on it with a car or anything. So when we first got on there, we heard the first 2 knocks and then walked through everything. Hour and a half later, as we're leaving, I just felt that urge. I'm like, I got to say, I'm going to thank them, because it was fascinating to hear the first 2 knocks. And then when I said, "Thank you," bam, bam, we heard it again. And that led us to believe, too, that I think that they're, what's that one guy's name? Todd Standing talks about it, that they would set up like a sentry. Like there's some of them that will actually, when they bed down or if they go to sleep, something or somebody is hanging out and watching, so that if they hear a 4x4 machine pull up or people pull up or talking, whatever, I think that sometimes that maybe those wood knocks are to let somebody else know that somebody's getting close. And we, again, who knows, but that was my thoughts, and that's what I thought there, because when we got to that area, we heard it twice. When we were leaving the area, I made the remark and thanked them, and they did it again. It was almost like I said, "Okay, they came, now they're leaving," or was it a remark to come back and do that?
Like
Yeah. I mean, but those are, those are some of the things that I've seen, and that that we experienced that being out there, and I wish that if it was like a show, I could be sharing a bunch of these pictures, because there's so many beautiful pictures of these things, and a lot of researchers, on Facebook that you see, they're all finding these, and they're finding them everywhere. And it just seems that you know it, you can feel it, and I don't want to go to the woo side of this and say that, but I'm sensitive to a point. I do a lot of things with metaphysics and helping people and meditations and stuff like that. So I'm a firm believer of being in tune with things, and I think that if you're, how can I say this so I don't sound like one of those crazy people? If you, well, it's true, because people look at you in a really funny way.
No, I get it.
I do a lot of meditations. I go to the gym. I'm trying to be in tune with myself, and I think that people that are their vibration, if you are at a different level than some other people. For instance, if a gentleman says to me, "I've been in the woods for 20 years and I've never seen anything, you're full of crap." You know what? Maybe you are in a tree blind and maybe you don't, but it might be your energy. It might be your disposition.
Right.
I think that these things make a choice to show themselves to people. When people say, "Well, we go out, we don't see nothing," whatever, but I think if a lot of people will say this, if you sit in the woods and you wait, they'll come to you. They'll fire. Sit out there and be quiet and come to you. You go out there and you're looking for them, you might get lucky, you might not, but I think that it's a choice. I think that they decide to choose and say, "You know what? you're going to see me or they're going to let you see them. And yes, there's chance encounters where, backpackers run into them and hunters run into them, and a guy on a mountain bike, in California could run into them, and you might catch one off guard. But I think 9 times out of 10, these things are well aware who you are. This is their home. This is their backyard. They know when you're in the woods. They know when you can't be quiet.
Mm-hmm.
You can't be quiet enough to sneak up on something. I mean, at least that's my belief, as far as what I'm thinking. I don't think that you're going to sneak up on them. And I think that when these encounters happen for people, because I listen to all of these other podcasts and things, and I think, wow, some of these people are having some really incredible and really scary, encounters. You get the people that say, be careful what you wish for, because you go out there looking for this, you might get more than you want. And then the other people that I know, and I have some other people on the other end of the spectrum that say they would never hurt you. And they're beautiful beings, and they're loving, and all this stuff. And I'm thinking, well, how do you know this? How does this person know this?
Right.
I feel in my heart, nobody really knows.
No.
We're all kind of like grasping at these straws, and we're all kind of trying to put this thing together. And everybody, and I say this all the time, there's no experts. There's not one investigator or one researcher that, when the guys brag, well, I've been doing this for 20 years or 25 years, I'm like, okay, and I've been doing this less than a year. What do you know that I don't know? What do you have? What can you prove? You can't. It comes right back to what people's theories are and what this is having. And I know there's a lot of separate groups that are out there that are probably holding on to a lot of information, and some people wait to go public with what they got. You always hear people talking, well, we're doing a documentary right now, or we're doing this, or this guy's doing that. And maybe real soon somebody's going to come out with some really, really great evidence. But it's really hard for any video, any photos, or anything these days that people will get behind and call it, we'll call it credible without having a body. Even the DNA things that people have tried to do, all of those things seem to fail. There always seems to be a suppression of information, or that's stopping the researchers to get to a certain point of where they get at. And I don't really go into it because I don't know enough about it. I just know that it exists. And that these people are definitely having encounters, and they're definitely having, something is happening when state police, when people in higher positions, and all these people are having encounters. Can they all be wrong? Can they all be making it up? Or do they all are looking for their 10 seconds of fame and say, well, I saw it, those in my backyard, or, it crossed in front of me in my truck. I just find it really hard to believe that this thing that is happening, this phenomenon that is happening in all the states, nobody to this day has anything to pull out and say, here it is, or here's what we got, or this is it, and it blows my mind. And that's the whole, I guess the whole purpose was trying to educate people, and starting with this aspect of it that I bring to the table, and what I've been doing as of late, because I got prints and I have audio and I have stuff like that, and I have this, this photos that my son had taken. But I'm bringing the tree structure into that. Now my partner, the guy on the other end of this, he actually has a BFRO encounter, and he's had actually a couple different encounters. And there's been people on his property, that was hunting out there that had encounters where it followed him out of the woods, and the guy came out, with tears in his eyes, and that's something that basically walked through. So, hello?
Man. Yeah.
I didn't know if
Are you there?
Okay.
No, I'm here. We're actually past the hour.
Oh, my God.
A lot of it. I told you that would go fast. So
okay.
I'm hoping that we're still we're not live anymore. We're actually in the archives.
We're not live,
and I'm not.
I think it's actually.
Yeah. So I'm not sure how long it'll keep recording, but
Sure.
So man, that was amazing. Thank you so much for sharing everything.
Thank you.
You did great tonight.
You sure?
You really were great.
Once I started talking, I'm like, and then I'm like, maybe I should not say, and that I'm like, she didn't even have a chance to ask me anything. Once I started talking, I kind of wanted to go through those certain things.
Fine. Oh, definitely. You covered, and I feel like we're going to have a part 2 to cover everything else that you need to talk about, and maybe we can have you back after the conference, and you can, kind of share the reaction that everyone had, because you're telling us that you have exclusive stuff that you haven't shared online that you're sharing at the conference. So maybe you can come back and share reactions and share if you end up going to someone's weird property after the conference again.
The thing that I laugh about now, as I say, is this. It started off, like I said, it was kind of like a joke. And I told my son, I'm like, let's just go. It'll be fun. It'll be fun. Because I watched all the shows on TV. And so I said, it'll be fun. And then from going to it and paying to see a conference, to being asked to speak at the conference, because all these people that had reached out to me and seen what I had, they're like, wow, you have more things and have more stuff than researchers have gathered in 3 years, and you've got in less than a year. And I was like, how do you do it?
Yes.
How did you get this? Or how did
that is
and
amazing.
I just say, I'm like, it's luck. I'm like, just being at the right place. But no, it is. And I'm like, just being out there. But I do believe that sometimes along the way that I'm drawn to it. That it's like they find me. I can't explain it, but when I go out there, a lot of people say, I want to go out with them, because every time they go out, they see something, hear something. And not every single time, but I do feel that something inside me tells me, Chuck, you should go this way. And you go this way, and I'll be a son of a gun, and all of a sudden there'll be this 18-foot structure off the ground, and it's beautiful. And I'm like, whoa, and I just feel like I've led there. But that's neither here nor there, and I appreciate so much the exposure, and I appreciate the time, and you guys have all of it. So it's just a great honor, and I would love the opportunity to come back and share some more with you. And hopefully when I do, I'll be able to share something really good.
Oh, yeah, I hope so, too. And when you come back, we'll let Lori sink her hooks into you, and she's a veteran researcher herself and a veteran interviewer, so we'll let her talk to you, and I'm sure she's going to listen to this show tomorrow or Tuesday, and she's probably going to have a ton of questions. So yeah, we'll definitely have you back on, and I wish you luck at the conference. I really hope that everything's well received, and you make new connections and get some more research done. And thank you so much for coming on tonight. You've been an excellent guest. Thank
you so much. And it's been an honor, and I hope to hear from you guys real soon.
Okay, definitely.
Is there a way for me to hear this, or a way for me to get this or anything, or do you know how that works?
Yes.
Or is there I can find it later on, right?
Right, definitely. So you can come back to, we'll share it on our Nite Callers page, or you can come to Blog Talk Radio directly. We'll also share it on our YouTube page. I found the easiest way to listen to it is on the Stitcher app. So that's Stitcher, like you're stitching something. So Stitcher app, and you can just listen live to all kinds of different podcasts on that app. And I think we're on iTunes as well. So those, I mean, there's just tons of ways to listen to it, and that's how I listen to all my shows, is the Stitcher app. So
will do, and I will go there. And tomorrow I'll look it up, and I'll see if I can link a thing and put it on the page and see, because I'm interested to hear it and to see how it went or how it sounded, if I sounded like a retard or whatever.
No, you'll be fine. I actually listen to the show the day after, and I do that same thing. Anytime I have to speak, I'm just like, oh, I sound so stupid. But we get these, people comment on it on our YouTube page, and they're very complimentary most of the time. The only complaints we have usually are audio complaints, which we're a live show, so we can't really do much about, but we do our best to fix it. But just check out our YouTube channel. You'll probably have a ton of compliments, because you've been a very great guest.
Well, thank you so much. And you have yourself a wonderful night. It's probably really warm over there. It's freezing. It's freezing over here in Michigan. And I thank you again.
It's about 50 degrees outside, so. But, yes,
that's chilly
you have a good night as well. And do what?
I said that's chilly for you guys probably, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's cold. I'm not about that life. I don't do snow. I could not be where you are ever.
I'm so done with it. Okay, well, I will let you go. And again, thank you so much.
All right, thank you. You have a good week. All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
The Starlight Lounge presents An Evening with the Progressive Box.
Oh, what a great audience. Let's dim the lights for this next one. Nope, too much. There it is. Gotta get things just right. Like Progressive's Name Your Price tool. Tell us what you want to pay, and we help you find coverage options that fit your budget. And now, the mood is right. Wait, the lights are back on again. Trudy, can you? And now it's completely dark.
Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law.